powers and becomes action. We are in a time. Hi, YouTube. Good to see you guys. Welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favor Show on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. We got a lot to unpack today. As you can see, we're going to be talking about the end of integration and what that means for those of us who benefited or who at least lived always in an integrated America. And it's important that we have this conversation because things are about to be very different. A number of years ago, decades ago, actually, in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson had to sign an executive order. Now, the executive order he signed was building on the legal foundation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Now, the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a piece of legislation that had been fought for decades. I've told y'all before that there was also a Civil Rights Act in the 1860s as well. But the 1964 Civil Rights Act was basically what took the American population, the American public, from a reality that said we are wholly, fully 1000% committed to segregation. Segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. That's what they used to say. That's what they still say. But segregation was a policy whereby it didn't matter how qualified you were. It didn't matter what merit you had. Segregation was a policy that said America was going to be a country of white people, for white people, and only white people. And yes, there are these other people who are here, but they don't get to have any of the things that the white people get. Now, why? Well, because white people said so. Now, I think, and I was reading Feminista Jones, who we've had on the show before, an amazing sister who I've known for years. I think she's just absolutely dynamic. She posted something on Instagram today, and this isn't a direct quote, but she basically posted, what must it be like to be a conscientious white man, to realize that in order for you to make it on top, that Donald Trump and the Republicans basically have to rig everything. They have to make it such a soft, cushiony place for you that you, a white man, will be able to be at the top only because you won't compete against anybody else, only because you won't have to deal with the realities that come when you compete with everybody else. They're going to create a very safe sandbox for you, white men, because apparently white men aren't good enough to do anything that they say they're supposed to be their birthright unless they rig the game. What must it be like to be a white man who believes that you're superior, and yet all of the moves that your leaders make are moves that basically say you're so inferior that the only way you can be superior is if nobody else plays? Kind of like not letting black men be quarterbacks. Right? Were it not for Lamar Jackson, and I'm sorry, were it not for that pass, and y'all know I don't do sports, but I have Lamar Jackson fans in the household. Like, this is a thing that I know. There could have been four, if we were this close to 4 black quarterbacks being in this stage of the NFL. And I know a lot of us ain't even watching the NFL, but a lot of us is. So let's just call it what it is. But whenever you keep black people out of things, for whatever reason you tell yourself, as soon as black people get into the thing, we dominate. And it's not like we ain't going around talking about we're superior. We're not going around talking about we're better. It's what happens. You kept us out of tennis. Get into tennis, dominate. Keep us out of swimming. Get into tennis, in swimming, dominate. Keep us out of corporate spaces. What do? Dominate. Keep us out of education. When we get in, what do? Dominate. Black women, the most educated people on the planet or in the country. And what must it be like, said Feminista Jones, this is my paraphrase, what must it be like to be a white man and to grow up thinking that you're superior and then realizing the only way that can actually be a thing is if you cheat? Because when you have to compete, there's no such thing as white superiority. When you're when you're not in a world that you artificially structured to center yourself, there is no such thing as superiority. Yesterday, we got wind of the fact that after this, actually, let me get back to this executive order. So in 1964, there was basically the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 basically says you can't be racist in public. And you can't be racist in public because being racist in public is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. And it basically says that you cannot discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Provisions of the Civil Rights Act forbade discrimination on the basis of sex as well as race in hiring, promoting, and firing. This was the legislation that basically said you could have a hotel and you could be as racist of a hotel owner as you want to be, but you cannot deny Black people access to the hotel simply because they're Black. You could have a restaurant and you could be as racist as you want to be, but you're not allowed to block Black people from getting access to your restaurant simply because they're Black. And by Black, I also mean Asian and Latino, and it's everybody else who's benefited off the strength of the Black American struggle for freedom and liberation in this country. And the Civil Rights Act was important because prior to that time, white drinking fountains and Black drinking fountains were the thing. White bathrooms and Black bathrooms were the thing. White schools and Black schools, if you got a school in the Black community, were the thing. Having Jim Crow was the cultural underpinning of the segregation legal structure under which this country operated basically from the end of Reconstruction, which we talked about yesterday or 2 days ago, up until 1964 and beyond. But once these laws got passed, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, followed by the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which prevents discrimination in elections, followed by the 1968 Fair Housing Act, which prevents discrimination in housing, taking care of redlining-ish, right? Because we know that there's a bunch of asterisks against all of those. But these three laws were the three pillars of legal jurisprudence and framework that took the country from wholly embracing segregation to one that said, no, now we're going to be integrated. We're no longer going to artificially say that white people are better just because white people said so. We're going to open it up. People are going to get to compete and people are going to get to prove, and the most meritorious will win. America has never been about meritocracy. They couldn't even farm their own land that they stole, like from other people. It's never been about a meritocracy. But these are the lies that white Americans were allowed to tell themselves so that they could navigate this world in this artificial, almost like a virtual reality space where they said they were the best because they said they were the best. No proof, no merit, no nothing. And we know it's not true because every single time we get in, we blow you out the water. Now, this is not about setting up an us versus you. It's just now we're here. We're in Jim Crow Project 2025. And keep in mind that Black people have never had to go around declaring how amazing and awesome and wonderful we are, except in a pushback to the messaging that says that we aren't human, that we aren't capable. So in 1964, we have the Civil Rights Act. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signs an executive order, because just because you have legislation doesn't mean you have the regulations in place and understanding as to what the policy is going to look like on the ground. So President Lyndon B. Johnson signed this executive order 11246, and this is an executive order that speaks to equal employment opportunity. Part in non-discrimination in government employment, non-discrimination in employment by government contractors and subcontractors. And it says the Secretary of Labor shall be responsible for the administration of this act, and it goes on to recite the acts. And it says during the performance of the contract. Actually, let me back up a bit. Except in contracts that are exempted, all government contracting agencies shall include in every government contract hereafter the following provisions. And it includes provisions that basically said, if you're going to contract with the government, if you're going to get federal contracting dollars, because the federal government is now actually going to live and operate in accordance with the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, actually going to allow for equal opportunity in accordance with the 14th Amendment, you cannot, as a contractor, be racist and exclusionary. You cannot, it says the contractor will not discriminate against any employee or applicant for employment because of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. The contractor will take affirmative action to ensure, this is where we get affirmative action from. The contractor will take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are employed and that employees are treated during employment without regard to their race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and so forth. Why was this necessary? They had to do this because white people were so, as a group, not the righteous, we know y'all out there, but y'all ain't loud enough. White people as a group, without question, were proactively discriminatory and racist. Were proactively excluding people without consideration of their merit from positions for which they were overqualified. Affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion were hacks to the racism, because white people, and by white people, I do mean you if you're listening and you aren't protesting against this. I do mean your parents if they were a part of this and didn't protest and resist it. I do mean your grandparents, your aunties. I mean y'all. Since we're talking about groups, that includes you. Now, if you're a righteous white, just then do what you got to do. But this is why we had this executive order. It took over 100 years to get this executive order. It took over 100 years, damn near 100 years to get the 1964 Civil Rights Act signed. And in 24 to 48 hours, white Christian nationalists came into power and undid it all with a stroke of a pen. With the stroke of a pen. Now, what's significant about this is that this isn't just going to impact federal workers. We all got the word yesterday that if you are a federal employee who deals with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is interesting because people seem to think that that's only Black. It's veterans, right? It's people on disabilities. It's people of all races. It's women who got 78% of the beneficiary dollars out of the diversity, equity, and inclusion mandates for federal contracting. But if you are in a job in the federal government, you have been placed on leave with anticipation that you will be let go. There are folks who are still in the government who are not necessarily directly related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but of course they're now going to be seen as such simply because they're not white men. And they're going to be facing the implications of a purge. Now, what this also means is that because this executive order said that if you were contracting with the federal government and you were part of the private industry, right? So private corporations contracting with the federal government, it meant that in your private corporation, you also could not discriminate, which is what helped to make the broader workplace a more equitable space for everybody. And now that too is no longer a mandate. So just like how when that first lawsuit came down and they got rid of affirmative action in collegiate admissions, and people like myself said, this gonna fuck up what's happening in corporate America. Remember that? I remember when a lot of people were like, oh, Lurie, you're being hyperbolic and you're being extra. This is just with college admissions. Here we are. I told you so. And I am, and I told you so, petty kind of sister. I just am. I told you so. This is going to be what it is. But what we are now seeing is that the Trump administration has also said, in addition to putting those people on leave, they have also said that if you know that your colleague actually is somebody who works in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now after the election, they're trying to pull back, or they're trying to, I don't know, as Don Calloway instructed people to do yesterday on Karen Hunter's show, they are now trying to reframe their positions. Maybe you're trying to have your job description rewritten so you're no longer dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. They now have issued a warning that said if you are a federal worker and you know that there are other federal workers who are doing DEI type stuff, maybe they're no longer calling it race, maybe they're focusing on this other measure of equity, then you got to say something. You see equity happening, say something. See something, say something. Now you got to say something. Otherwise, you are going to be targeted. You know who also did this? The Nazis. Hitler. This is what they did. It's not just that we're going to crack down on you. We're also going to crack down on the people who know that you exist and they don't tell. They have made the feds the feds. They're turning on themselves. These are the people who this country chose to put into office. We told you so. We told you Project 2025 was coming. We told you this. Now we've got people who are in the medical community, all nursing critical shortages everywhere, and people who had received offers to work for the federal government to fill these desperately needed nursing positions on hold. We got people who said, or putting out on social media, I voted for you, Donald Trump, and my wife is a nurse. We just bought a new house because she got a job offer. We're packed up and ready to move, and that offer has been rescinded. I'm seeing offers rescinded everywhere. Hiring freeze in place. These people are very clear about what they meant when they talked about Make America Great Again. We told you, but some of y'all said she wasn't Black enough. We told you, but some of y'all said Project 2025 wasn't a real thing. We told you that this was going to happen. And so we are now in a moment where we, the village, have to figure out how we respond. I gave the example of the buffalo this morning in our moment of gratitude. And today is Umoja in the Kwanzaa calendar. Umoja, because Kwanzaa took place, it started on a Wednesday. No, Christmas was on, right. Kwanzaa started on Thursday. Kwanzaa started on Thursday. The first principle of Kwanzaa is Umoja, unity, which means we strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and race. And so the unity that we are going to have, this is why we're doing FUBU February. Why we are going to, and it happened as an accident. We didn't know we were going to come up with this idea of FUBU February. A caller, who was it, Dave from Alabama? Dave from Alabama called in, and basically out of that conversation, we now have FUBU February, where we are going to intentionally, with every dime that we have to spend, where we consciously take a moment to ask ourselves, what Black-owned supplier provides this that I can get from? And it might take me out of, I might not be able to go get the coffee down the corner. I might have to go 2 blocks away to the Black-owned coffee shop. But we're going to have FUBU February to change our mindset, because the white American mindset of domination and white supremacy has always been there. They ain't got to change nothing. They there. We are the ones who have, for the past 60 plus years, redefined what it means to be successful as being able to go to their schools and learn their information and understand how to present ourselves in a way that made our 80% of white women teachers feel more comfortable with us, and then learn how to talk in a way that made us seem less threatening, and then learn how to speak in such an alliteration that when we interviewed, we were considered like a great option for these jobs. And then we were taught that we should go to good schools, get good grades, master whiteness so we can interview well, get a good job, and buy a house in a neighborhood next to them, even though they don't want us to be there, but we would be the only ones because we are successful. And we tied success for our young people for generations. We have tied the idea of success as getting a job in their spaces, getting access to their spaces, being able to succeed on their terms. And they just said, we're done. The challenge is, because our version of integration as Black people was 110%. We bought in 110%. Now, other communities that integrated, and y'all have heard me say this before, they didn't integrate the way that we did. We did that. They didn't integrate the way that we did. They was like, no, we gonna send our kids to your school, but we still gonna keep the Korea school on Saturdays because our kids need to learn how to speak and write Korean. We gonna send them to work in your institutions, but we gonna keep these Korean or these Russian or these Ukrainian or these Latino-owned stores, because while we want them to go out and be successful there, we also know we gotta have a home base. Yeah, we gonna send you to the hospital that they own, but we gonna keep our own Chinese healing centers and spaces and continue to maintain our indigenous wisdom because we don't trust them all the way. We're not going to do what the Black people did. Now, admittedly, they could do that because they didn't have 400 years of oppression and 300 or some odd years by that point. 300 some odd years of basic mind fuckery, where essentially we were so beaten down by our own reality that it made logical sense. Not to everybody, because some people said don't do it, but we didn't listen. And so we are now in a moment where the pathways to opportunity, the pathways to success, which used to go through Whitelandia, are closed. Umoja, unity, to strive for and maintain unity within the family, community, nation, and race. FUBU February is going to give us an opportunity to change our mindset. And that's why the first book that we're reading for our book club is Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. We have a quick mind quicks that we have to get through. We don't have a lot of time. We have got to get our mindset reclaimed and get on the healing process. Things that we could have been doing over the past 6 decades, but we didn't. And it's all right because we're going to figure it out now. But these circumstances are going to force us into this reality. So with that, let's talk about Snoop. Let's talk about Nelly. Let's talk about Rick Ross. Let's talk about Soulja Boy. Because they made some decisions that really, for me, made a stark choice. They made some decisions to do, and Snoop Dogg had said before that if you are going to perform at the inauguration for Donald Trump, he was like, which jigaboo type of, and he went in, and we was all like, yup. So this is not about coming up with some new way of shading them brothers or coming up with some new way of like critiquing them. It's really about what their decision. And when Soulja Boy waved that pack of money, looking like a child soldier, right? I don't mean a soldier, but I mean a child soldier, somebody who from young had been trained to pick up arms, his lyrical, but to pick up arms and to make decisions that were going to violate and decimate the community. When I'm talking about child soldiers, I'm talking about in war-torn lands where they take the young people, get their minds, and convince them that working against the interests of the people from which they come in order to support this regime that is trying to wipe out and dominate is what they are supposed to do. And they do it at force. These young child soldiers are drugged. They are forced to do so. And so when I saw Soulja Boy, the child soldier, waving the pack of money. When I saw Nelly get on and say, no, I don't need the money. I'm just doing it because I believe in the president, the office of the presidency. When we saw these men, Rick Ross, when they got on stage and they in a room full of people who did everything that I just talked about, in a room full of people who took integration and said, damn that, we're done. It's whiteness, whiteness, whiteness. They in a room full of them folks playing songs where these white people get to scream at the top of their lungs, N-word, and like it was an opportunity for clarity. It was an opportunity for clarity. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. Over a year ago now, I think it might have been. I mean, I don't know how long have we had that Dr. Umar clip? We had that for since 2023, June of 2023. I sent Amina a series of clips. Dr. Umar Johnson was asking some questions about hip hop, and we're going to play the clip. You on YouTube, you're not going to hear it, but we'll play the clip so Urban View can hear it. And in this clip, he basically asks, where are the hip hop funded hospitals? Where are the hip hop funded HBCUs? Where are the hip hop funded school systems? Not your school named after you that ain't got no certified teachers, and like a real school system. Where are the hip hop funded banks? And he goes through this series of questions, and I'm paraphrasing, this isn't a direct quote. And he asks these questions because the reality is, from, I guess I should say, my interpretation as to why he asked these questions is because the reality is this community, the village, we the village, have given a lot so that shiny suit, song singing, slanging, dick slanging, rock slanging women in chains. And we've given a lot for you to have a juvenile child soldier approach to artistic expression. The community has suffered a lot so that you could talk about how big and bad your bank account is. We've taken a lot as a result. And then by lot, I mean the conditioning. We had Dr. Obadala, what's that brother's name from Columbia University who does neurology and hip hop? We had this brother on over a year ago. 2 years ago, I believe. And he is an expert in neurology. And he came on this show and he talked about, and neurology, for those of you who don't know, is the study of the way the brain works. And he came on this show and we talked about the power of hip hop, the power of music generally as a learning tool. And one of the things he told us was that the portion of the brain that deals with sight and the portion of the brain that deals with sound, they're right next to each other. Right next to each other. And so when you take something like a music video where there's sight content and there's audio content, that is one of, because those two sections of the brain are so close to each other, it's one of the most powerful learning mechanisms you can find. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We all know the ABCs because of song. And he talked about how song, music, is one of the ways of inducing trance, which is one of the reasons that songs feature so prominently in the Black church. Music features so prominently in Black religious spaces. Trance-like, the ability to bring your brain into such a space that you are highly susceptible to messaging, highly susceptible to programming. And he talked with us about the fact that, listen, y'all we might not have liked how C. Dolores Tucker did what C. Dolores Tucker did and said what she said. But C. Dolores Tucker was onto something, because when you put lyrics, I don't give a fuck about your feelings. When you put lyrics, I ain't never scared. When you put lyrics, ain't no fun if the homies can't have them. When you put lyrics, a bitch is a bitch, a hoe is, when you put lyrics to music, when you put words to music, it is the most powerful messaging format, the most powerful training format, which is why ad commercials and jingles are multi-billion, if not at some levels, trillion-dollar industries. The community's paid a lot for juvenile men to be able to stand on stage singing songs with messaging that was inherently unable to do anything but destroy our ability to see ourselves in a positive light. And that's your right. This ain't about criticizing. If you want to listen to bang, bang, shoot 'em up music, this ain't about that. This is about the fact that we, the village, have had to hold the carcasses, the bodies, metaphorical and physical bodies that have been produced as a result of a form of music so you could have expression, so you could be the big man. We paid a lot. We've paid a lot. And my question is, what are we, the village, getting in return? You get to stand up on stage and support white supremacists, white nationalists who are destroying our ability to sustain ourselves. Who the fuck do you think you are in the village context? Now, you can be whoever you want to be as an individual. You can be whoever you want to be out there, but you know the reason that we have a differentiation between the village and individuals is because of the following. In a collective-minded space, where the needs of the community matter more than the needs of the individual, you would never be allowed to produce content that was going to hurt the group, because the needs of the group matter more than your individual selfishness. In a community where we are collective umoja minded, if you were to produce weapons that were then used against the people in the village, you can't be in the village no more because you're dangerous. And in an individualistic society, your ability to make weapons that harm everybody is the most important thing because you center the needs of the individual. We are in a space where Africans have American dreams, and it is turning into a collective nightmare. And so I just want us to ask ourselves, now that America has said we tried integration and we're done. And I said this back, years I've been saying this. Years I've been saying this shit. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. Anybody who knows history knew this shit was coming. But now that we're here, how does the village respond? 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. How does the village respond when, as I said before, remember when I would ask that question? Think about every single thing our community relies upon that is provided for us by people outside of the community, and imagine one day they turn it off. How quickly would we be able to supply everything that we rely upon for ourselves? How quickly could we do it? Well, we're about to find out because they just turned it off. And now we, the village, have to respond. And part of our response has to be, what do we do with those who make it easier for the people who hate us, who make it easier for them to do what it is that they're going to do? How do we respond when people who are creating content in our community are providing soundtracks for their community to destroy us? Not that they need one. They were going to destroy us on their own offbeat anyway, or they were going to try. But now here we are. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. YouTube, thank you so much for listening in. Please like and subscribe and share all the things. We got a lot to unpack. 866-801-8255. Amina, if you could please pull the first Dr. Umar Johnson clip. I want us to take a listen. Is it ready now? Okay. Bye, YouTube. Appreciate y'all. Bye. Urban View, pay attention.
Try to act like the waste